The rifle was already in Elijah Thornton's hands when the barn door flew open. He hadn't held a child in 6 years, not since he buried his daughter Hope in the frozen ground. But when that little girl collapsed at his feet, blue-lipped and barely breathing, he dropped the gun and caught her before she hit the dirt. Behind her, 6 more children stumbled out of the shadows. The oldest boy grabbed Elijah's coat and choked out 3 words. He killed Papa. Subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far our tale has traveled. The little girl hit the ground hard. Elijah dropped his rifle and lunged. His knees slammed into frozen dirt. He caught her head before it cracked against the barn floor, pulled her into his arms. Cold. She was so cold, lips blue, eyes rolled back, breathing shallow as a dying bird. Lily! A girl's scream cut through the dark. Lily, no! More children spilled from behind the feed bins. 2, 3, 4. Elijah lost count. Small bodies, thin faces, eyes wild with terror. A boy stepped in front of them. Tall, maybe 14. Fists up like he was ready to fight. Put her down. She's dying. Elijah stood the little one limp in his arms. You want to save her? Or you want to argue? The boy's jaw worked. His whole body shook cold fear both. How do I know you ain't gonna? You don't. Elijah was already moving toward the barn door. But she's got maybe 10 minutes before the cold takes her, so make up your mind. He didn't wait for an answer, just walked. Behind him, footsteps. Small ones, lots of them, good. The house was 20 yards through knee-deep snow. Elijah kicked the door open, carried the girl straight to the hearth. The fire had burned low. He laid her on the rug and grabbed kindling. You, he pointed at the tall boy. Wood box. Build this up. Fast. The boy hesitated. Now. Something in Elijah's voice moved him. He grabbed logs, started stacking. The other children filed in. Elijah counted as they passed. 6 more. 7 total, including the one on the floor. 3 boys, 4 girls, all of them skinny as fence posts. Close that door. Elijah was rubbing the little girl's hands, trying to force blood back into her fingers. And somebody tell me her name. Lily. A girl knelt beside him, 12 maybe, yellow hair, face pale as milk. She's 4. She stopped talking an hour ago. When she eat last? Silence. Elijah looked up. The yellow-haired girl wouldn't meet his eyes. When? 3 days. Her voice cracked. Maybe 4. Elijah's gut twisted. He'd seen starving cattle. He'd seen drought kill a whole herd in a single summer. But starving children was something else. Kitchen. He jerked his head at the tall boy. Bread in the tin. Milk in the cold box. Bring it. All of it. The boy. Sam Elijah heard one of the others whisper, moved fast. The rest of you. Elijah pointed at the rug near the fire. Sit. Don't talk. Just get warm. Nobody argued. Lily's eyes fluttered open around midnight. She looked up at Elijah, confused, scared. Then she saw Clara, the yellow-haired girl her sister Elijah had figured out, and reached for her. Clara! Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm hungry. Clara burst into tears. Elijah handed her a cup of warm milk. Small sips. Her stomach ain't ready for much. He stood and moved to the window. Outside, nothing but snow and darkness. The wind had died down some, but the cold was brutal. 25 below easy. Mister. He turned. The tall boy Sam stood behind him. His face was hard, but his eyes gave him away. Scared. Bone-deep scared. We ain't staying. Sam's voice was flat. Soon as Lily's better, we're gone. Where? Don't matter. Just away. Away from what? Sam's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Boy. Elijah kept his voice low. I just pulled your sister off my barn floor half dead from cold and hunger. I fed you. I warmed you. Least you can do is tell me what you're running from." Sam stared at him for a long moment, then his shoulders dropped. "You know Cornelius Ashford." Elijah's blood went cold. Everyone in Wyoming Territory knew Cornelius Ashford. Richest man in 3 counties. Owned the bank in Silver Springs, half the mines in the hills, and rumor had it the judge and sheriff both. "I know him. He's our guardian." Sam spat the word like poison. "Legal and proper. Got papers signed by Judge Harmon himself. Guardian." Elijah looked at the children huddled by the fire, at the bruises on the dark-haired girl's arms, at the hollow cheeks and haunted eyes. "That what you call a man who starves children? He calls it discipline." Sam's voice cracked. "Says orphans need a firm hand. You ain't orphans. Your mama sold us." Sam's face went blank. $200. That's what we were worth." Elijah said nothing. There was nothing to say. She didn't want to. Clara's voice came from behind them. She was still holding Lily, stroking her hair. "Mama was desperate. Papa died in the mines and there was nothing left. Ashford said he'd give us a good home, said he'd send us to school, treat us like his own." "But he lied," Sam finished. "He always lies." The fire crackled. Wind moaned outside. "That ain't the worst of it." A new voice. Quiet. Flat. Elijah turned. A boy, maybe 10, red hair and freckles, was watching him from near the hearth. He hadn't spoken since they'd come inside. "Jake." Sam's voice was sharp. "Don't." "He needs to know." Jake stood up slowly, his hand pressed against his chest over something hidden under his thin coat. "If he's gonna help us, he needs to know why Ashford wants us gone." "Jake, Ashford killed my papa." Jake's eyes didn't waver. "Pushed him off a cliff and made it look like an accident. I saw it happen." The room went dead silent. Elijah felt the weight of those words settle on him like stones. "You saw it." "I was up on the ridge, playing." Jake's voice was steady, too steady for a 10-year-old. "Papa and Ashford were arguing at the cliff edge, about money, about the mine. Papa said he was going to change the partnership papers. Said Ashford wasn't getting another cent." "What happened then?" "Ashford pushed him." Jake's hand pressed harder against his chest. "One shove. That's all it took. Papa went over the edge and I heard him scream all the way down." Clara was crying silently. Sam had gone pale. "Ashford climbed down after," Jake continued. "Took something from Papa's coat. Papers. Then he rode back to town and told everyone it was an accident. Said Papa slipped on loose rock. And nobody questioned it. Ashford owns the sheriff, owns the judge, owns half the town." Jake's eyes were hard. Who was going to question him? Elijah looked at the boy, at the hand pressed to his chest, at the shape hidden beneath his coat. "What did you see, Jake?" "Exactly." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather book. Worn cover, dog-eared pages. "I remember everything." He held the book tight. "And I never forget." Before Elijah could respond, a girl's voice cut through the silence. "Someone's coming." The dark-haired girl, Grace Sam's other sister, was at the window. Her face was white. "Riders, 3 of them, coming up the road." Elijah moved fast. He grabbed his rifle from where he'd dropped it, checked the chamber. "All of you, back room, now." "But," Clara started. "Now." Sam grabbed Lily from Clara's arms. "You heard him. Move." The children scrambled. Elijah waited until he heard the back room door close, then crossed to the window. 3 riders, just like Grace said, moving slow through the snow, lanterns swinging. Elijah's finger found the trigger. The lead rider pulled up at the edge of the yard, called out, "Thornton Elijah Thornton." Not Ashford. Elijah recognized the voice. Wade Garrett, County Sheriff. Bought and paid for maybe, but not a killer. Not yet. What do you want, Wade? Need to talk. Official business. It's past midnight. I know what time it is. Garrett's voice was tired. Open the door, Elijah. It's cold as hell out here. Elijah weighed his options. Running would only make things worse. And Garrett wasn't a bad man, just a weak one. He opened the door. Garrett stepped inside, stamping snow from his boots. Behind him, 2 deputies waited in the yard hands near their guns. Heard you had visitors tonight? Garrett's eyes swept the room. 7 children, give or take. Property of Cornelius Ashford. Property. Elijah didn't lower the rifle. That what we're calling children now. Legal wards, same thing. Garrett held up a folded paper. Ashford filed a complaint. Says you're harboring runaways. Wants them back. And if I say no, then I arrest you for kidnapping and take them anyway. Garrett's jaw tightened. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Elijah. Just give me the kids and nobody gets hurt. Nobody except them. Elijah met his eyes. You seen the bruises on those children, Wade? Seen how thin they are? Ashford's been starving them, beating them. And you want to hand them back. Something flickered across Garrett's face. Doubt. Shame. I got orders, Elijah. Orders from who? Ashford Judge Harmon. Elijah stepped closer. You remember what happened to James Brennan, Wade? Fell off a cliff 2 years back. Convenient timing, wasn't it? Right after he tried to change the partnership papers on that silver mine. Garrett's face went pale. That boy in my back room saw it happen. Elijah's voice was low hard. Saw Ashford push his daddy off that cliff. Saw him take papers from the body. You want to give a murderer's witness back to the murderer? Silence. Just the wind and the fire. I can't. Garrett shook his head. I can't just ignore a legal order, Elijah. Ashford's got papers, signed by the judge. Then give me time. 3 days. Let me find proof. Proof of what? That Ashford murdered James Brennan, that those guardianship papers are a lie. Elijah set the rifle against the wall. 3 days, Wade. That's all I'm asking. Garrett stared at him for a long moment. 2 days. His voice was barely a whisper. Ashford's coming for them on New Year's morning. I can't stop him without a damn good reason. Then I'll give you one. Garrett turned and walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. Elijah, you know what you're risking, everything. Your land, your freedom, maybe your life. I know. Why? You don't even know these kids. Elijah thought about Margaret, about Hope, about the 2 graves behind the house covered in snow. Maybe that's why. Garrett shook his head slowly. Then he walked out into the cold. The children were huddled together in the back room when Elijah opened the door. Lily was asleep in Clara's arms. Tommy, the 6-year-old, with the stuffed bear, had his face pressed against Sam's shoulder. The others were wide-awake eyes fixed on Elijah. They gone? Sam asked. For now. We got 2 days. 2 days until what? Until I find a way to stop Ashford for good. Jake stepped forward. His hand was still pressed against his chest over the leather book. I can help. His voice was quiet, but steady. I remember everything. Every word Ashford said, every move he made. I can tell a judge. No. Elijah cut him off. You keep that to yourself for now. Don't mention it. Don't show it. Don't even think about it where someone might see. But Ashford's got the judge in his pocket. You walk into that courtroom waving evidence around, it disappears. You disappear. Elijah knelt so he was eye level with the boy. You understand what I'm saying? Jake's face went pale. He understood. When the time comes, you'll get your chance. But not yet. Not until we got people who'll listen. What people? Grace's voice was bitter. Everyone in this territory answers to Ashford. Not everyone. Elijah stood. There's a preacher named Stone. Rides circuit through the county. If your folks registered any papers with the church wills, birth records, anything, he'd know. Mama talked to a preacher, Clara said slowly. Right before she gave us to Ashford. Said she wanted to make sure we'd be taken care of. That's something. Elijah moved to the window, looked out at the dark. First light I ride for town. Find Stone. Find proof. You stay here. Keep the doors locked. Keep the curtains closed. And if Ashford comes before you get back? Sam's voice was tight. Elijah crossed to the corner and picked up his rifle, held it out. Then you do what needs doing. Sam stared at the gun like it might bite him. I ain't never shot nobody. Let's hope you don't have to. Elijah pressed the rifle into his hands. But if it comes down to them or you protect your family. That's what family does. Sam's hands were shaking, but he took the gun. The night stretched on. Elijah sent the children to bed, his bed all 7 of them piled together for warmth, and sat in his chair by the fire. He couldn't sleep. Didn't try. 2 days. 48 hours to find proof that one of the richest men in Wyoming territory was a murderer. To convince a bought judge to side with a broke rancher and 7 starving kids. Impossible odds. But he'd faced impossible before. Faced it when the diphtheria came through and took hope in 3 days. Faced it when Margaret stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped breathing. He'd failed then. Failed them both. Maybe this was his chance to do better. Around 3 in the morning, soft footsteps padded across the floor. Clara appeared in the firelight, Lily awake in her arms. She wants water. Elijah got up, filled a cup from the pitcher, handed it to Clara, who held it to Lily's lips. Mr. Thornton. Yeah. Why are you doing this? Clara's eyes were wet. You don't know us. You got no reason to risk everything for strangers. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. 6 years ago. His voice was rough. I had a wife, a daughter, Margaret and Hope. Clara waited. They're buried out back, under the oak tree. He stared at the fire. After they died, I stopped caring about much of anything. Figured if I didn't love nothing, I couldn't lose nothing. Lily had fallen asleep again. Clara held her close. Then you 7 came stumbling into my barn. Elijah looked at Clara, at the sleeping child in her arms. And I thought about Hope, about how she was the same age as Lily when she got sick, about how I would have done anything to save her. But you couldn't. No. His throat tightened. I couldn't. But maybe... He stopped. Started again. Maybe I can save you. Clara was crying now, silent tears running down her face. That don't make sense, she whispered. We ain't your family. Not yet. Elijah stood slowly. But family ain't about blood. Family's about who you're willing to fight for. He took Lily from Clara's arms, carried her back toward the bedroom. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Dawn broke gray and cold. Elijah saddled his horse before first light checked his rifle, loaded his pockets with extra ammunition. Not because he expected to shoot anyone, because Ashford's men might expect to shoot him. Sam was waiting in the doorway when he led the horse out. You're really going? Said I would. What if you don't come back? Elijah stopped. Looked at the boy, this 14-year-old who'd been carrying his family on his shoulders for months. There's a trapper's cabin 5 miles north up the creek. If I ain't back by sundown, you take the kids and head there. Stay hidden. Wait for me. How long? Long as it takes. Elijah swung up into the saddle. You're in charge, Sam. Don't let me down. Sam's jaw tightened. I won't. Elijah kicked the horse into motion. Didn't look back. The ride to Silver Springs took 2 hours. Snow had drifted deep on the roads, and the horse had to fight for every step. But Elijah pushed on the cold, biting through his coat, his mind racing ahead. He needed to find Stone, needed to find proof, needed to build a case strong enough to stand against Ashford's money and power. 2 days. That's all he had. Silver Springs was quiet when he rode in. New Year's morning. Most folks were sleeping off last night's whiskey. The streets were empty, the buildings shuttered. Elijah tied his horse outside Martha Chen's general store and pushed through the door. Martha looked up from her ledger. 55 years old, gray in her hair, ink stains on her fingers. She'd run this store alone since her husband died. Knew everything about everyone in 3 counties. Elijah Thornton. Her eyebrows went up. You look like hell. Feel like it too. He closed the door behind him. Need your help, Martha. What kind of help? The kind that might get us both killed. Martha set down her pen. Well, that's not something you hear every day. Sit down. Talk. He told her everything, the children, the beatings, the starvation, Jake's accusation. When he finished, Martha's face was stone. I always knew Ashford was a snake. She stood, moved to a cabinet in the corner. But murder, that's a different kind of evil. You believe it? I believe those children believe it, and I believe James Brennan didn't just fall off a cliff. She pulled out a yellowed piece of paper, handed it to him. Found this last week, going through old records. Elijah looked at it. An invoice from 1885, mining equipment purchased by James Brennan and Cornelius Ashford Partners. See the note at the bottom. Martha pointed. 3 weeks after this purchase, Brennan amended the partnership, made sure his share would go to his children if he died. And 2 weeks after that, he fell off a cliff. Martha's voice was flat. Convenient, ain't it? Elijah stared at the invoice. His hands shook. This is something, Martha. But it ain't enough. No, it ain't. She crossed her arms. But I know someone who might have more. Reverend Stone's in town, staying at the boarding house. I know. I was heading there next. Go, fast. Martha glanced toward the window. And Elijah, watch your back. Ashford's got eyes everywhere. The boarding house was 3 blocks down. Elijah moved quick, keeping to the shadows, hand near his gun. He found Stone in the common room eating breakfast by the fire. 62 years old, silver-haired, weathered face. The kind of preacher who'd seen everything and judged no one. Reverend. Stone looked up. His eyes narrowed. Elijah Thornton. Haven't seen you in church since... I ain't here for church. Elijah sat across from him, leaned close. I'm here about Cornelius Ashford and 7 children he's trying to destroy. Stone set down his fork. I'm listening. 20 minutes later, Stone's face was grave. I knew Sarah Whitmore, he said slowly. Talked to her before she signed those guardianship papers. She was desperate, Elijah, drowning in debt. I told her to wait, to find another way. But she was too scared. Did she register anything with the church? A will? Something that might give us a claim to those kids? Stone was quiet for a long moment. Not Sarah. He rubbed his forehead. But Emily Brennan James's wife, she registered her will with me 3 years ago, before she died of fever. What did it say? Named a guardian for Jake and Abby in case James couldn't care for them, her sister, Helen Crawley, up in Montana Territory. Elijah's heart kicked. If that will still exists. It supersedes any guardianship papers Ashford filed. Stone nodded. Helen Crawley would have legal claim to those children. Where's the will now? County seat, St. Catherine's Parish. Stone's jaw tightened. I can ride there today. But Elijah, it's 40 miles. In this weather, it'll take me 2 days minimum. I ain't got 2 days. Then you'll have to find another way to stall. Stone grabbed his coat. I'll leave within the hour. If the will exists, I'll find it. Thank you, Reverend. Stone paused at the door. Those children, they're safe. For now. Keep them that way. His eyes were hard. Whatever it takes. Elijah was halfway back to his horse when he saw them. 2 men, standing outside Martha's store. Hard faces, guns on their hips, and between them, stepping out of a fancy carriage, was Cornelius Ashford himself. Elijah ducked into an alley, pressed himself against the wall. Through the gap between buildings he could hear voices. Asking about some children, Mrs. Chen. 7 of them. Runaways from my care. Don't know nothing about no runaways. Martha's voice was ice. That's strange, because someone saw Elijah Thornton's horse tied outside your store not an hour ago. Ashford's voice was smooth, pleasant. The voice of a man who'd never had to fight for anything in his life. And Thornton's ranch is exactly where I'd expect desperate children to hide. Silence. You wouldn't be lying to me, would you, Mrs. Chen, because that would be unfortunate. I told you. I don't know nothing. A long pause. Then Ashford's voice lower now. Watch the store. If Thornton comes back, follow him. What about the rancher? Leave him to me. Footsteps crunched on snow. I'll be paying Mr. Thornton a visit this afternoon, and I'm bringing friends. Elijah didn't wait. He circled around through back alleys, found his horse, and rode hard for the hills. Not the main road. Too exposed. He took the back trails, the ones that wound through creek beds and pine forests. Trails that weren't on any map. His mind raced as he rode. Ashford knew. Knew the children were at his ranch. Knew Elijah was helping them. He had hours, maybe less, before Ashford showed up with his hired guns. The children needed to move. Now. He crested the ridge above his property just past noon. Looked down at the house. No smoke from the chimney. His blood turned to ice. He kicked the horse into a gallop, flew down the slope, hit the yard at a run, burst through the front door. Empty. Fire dead. Blankets scattered. And on the floor near the kitchen, blood. Not much. A smear. A few drops. But enough. Sam! His voice echoed through the empty house. Clara, Jake. Nothing. He ran to the back room. Empty. Checked the barn. Empty. The root cellar. Empty. They were gone. The trapper's cabin. Sam remembered. Elijah mounted up and rode north following the creek. His eyes scanned the snow for tracks. There. Small footprints. A lot of them. Moving fast. He followed. The trail wound through trees up the slope deeper into the mountains. An hour passed. 2. Then he heard voices. Sam, I can't carry her anymore. He rounded a bend and saw them. Clara struggling through waist-deep snow, Lily limp in her arms. Sam pulling Tommy by the hand. Jake and Abby huddled together. Grace bringing up the rear blood on her face. Clara! She spun. Nearly dropped Lily. Mr. Thornton. Relief flooded her face. They came. 2 men. They had guns and... I know. Elijah dismounted, took Lily from her arms. I know. You did good. You got out. Sam shot at them. Grace's voice was shaking. Scared them off, but one of them grabbed me and... Elijah saw the split lip, the bruise blooming on her cheek. Did you bite him? Grace's chin came up. Drew blood. Good girl. He swung back onto the horse, settled Lily in front of him. Cabin's another mile. Stay close. Stay quiet. We're almost there. The trapper's cabin was small, half buried in snow, but it was shelter. Elijah kicked the door open, carried Lily inside. Got a fire started with the last of his matches. The children huddled around the flames, shivering exhausted. Safe. For now. But Ashford was still out there, and tomorrow he'd be coming with the sheriff and a court order. Elijah sat by the door, rifle across his knees, watching the dark. "Mr. Thornton." He turned. Tommy, the 6-year-old, was watching him, clutching his ratty stuffed bear. "Yeah. Are you going to send us back to Uncle Neil?" "No." "Promise." Elijah looked at the small face, at the fear in those eyes, at all 7 children watching him, waiting for an answer. He thought about Hope, about the promise he'd made to keep her safe, about how he'd failed. "I promise," he said. "I ain't letting nobody take you, not while I'm breathing." Tommy nodded slowly. Then he crawled over and leaned against Elijah's side. "I believe you," Tommy whispered. "You're like the man in Clara's stories, the one who saves everyone." Elijah's throat tightened. He put his arm around the boy. "I ain't a hero, son." "That's okay." Tommy's eyes were closing. "Heroes are just people who don't give up." The fire crackled. Wind moaned against the walls. And somewhere in the dark, Elijah Thornton made a choice. Tomorrow, Ashford would come with his money and his lawyers and his bought sheriff. Tomorrow, the law would be against them. But tonight, 7 children were warm and fed and safe. And that was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. Dawn came slow and gray through the cabin's single window. Elijah hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every snap of a branch, every gust of wind against the walls, had him reaching for his rifle. The children slept in a pile near the fire, tangled together like puppies seeking warmth. Tommy had stayed pressed against Elijah's side all night, the stuffed bear clutched to his chest even in sleep. Elijah looked down at the boy's face. Peaceful now. No fear, no hunger, just a child dreaming whatever dreams children dream. He thought about Hope, about how she used to crawl into his lap on cold mornings, press her face against his chest, and say, "You're warm, Daddy, warm like sunshine." 6 years. 6 years since he'd heard that voice. But now there were other voices, other children, and they needed him awake. Sam stirred first. The boy sat up, rubbed his eyes, and found Elijah watching him. "You didn't sleep." "Somebody had to keep watch." Sam stood slowly, careful not to wake the others. He crossed to the window and looked out at the snow-covered mountains. "They'll come today." "Probably." "What do we do?" Elijah set the rifle against the wall and stood. His bones ached from sitting all night on the cold floor. "We can't stay here. Ashford knows my land. He'll figure out where I'd send you." He moved to the fire, added the last piece of wood. "There's a woman in town, Martha Chen. She's got a root cellar under her store, big enough for all of you." "You want us to hide in a cellar?" "I want you to stay alive." Elijah turned to face him. "Stone's riding for the county seat, looking for a will that might give us legal claim to Jake and Abby. If he finds it, everything changes. And if he doesn't—" Elijah didn't answer. He didn't have to. Clara woke next, then Grace, then the others one by one. Lily was the last, blinking up at Clara with confused eyes. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe, honey." Clara smoothed Lily's hair. "Mr. Thornton's taking care of us." Lily looked at Elijah, studied him with that strange intensity only small children have. "Are you our new daddy?" The question hit Elijah like a fist to the chest. He saw Clara flinch, saw Sam's jaw tighten. He stopped, started again. "I'm a friend. That's all you need to know for now." Lily considered this. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied, and reached for Clara's hand. They ate what little food Elijah had brought: dried beef, a few biscuits, water from the melted snow. Not much, but enough to put color back in their cheeks. Jake sat apart from the others, hunched over his leather book. His pencil moved across the page in quick, sure strokes. Elijah crossed to him. "What are you drawing?" Jake didn't look up. "Last night. The cabin. All of us together." Why? Because I might forget. And I don't want to forget this. Elijah looked at the page. Simple lines but clear. 7 children around a fire. A man with a rifle by the door. And above them, through the cabin's window, stars. You've got talent, boy. Mama said that too. Jake's pencil stopped. Before she died. How'd she pass? Fever, 2 years before Papa. Jake's voice was flat, empty. I drew her too, while she was sick, so I'd remember her face. Elijah's throat tightened. Can I see? Jake hesitated. Then he flipped back through the pages. Stopped at a drawing of a woman lying in bed, eyes closed, face peaceful. Beautiful, even in illness. She looks kind. She was. Jake closed the book. Papa said she was the kindest person he ever knew. Said that's why God took her early. Heaven needed her more than we did. You believe that? Jake looked up. His eyes were old, too old for 10. I believe God takes people. I don't believe he needs them. Before Elijah could respond, Grace's voice cut through the cabin. Someone's coming. Elijah grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. In the distance, a single rider was making his way up the creek bed, moving slow, careful. Everyone get back, behind the woodpile, now. The children scrambled. Sam grabbed Lily, Clara grabbed Tommy. Jake shoved his book inside his coat and pressed himself against the wall. Elijah cocked the rifle and waited. The rider came closer, close enough to make out details. A black coat, silver hair, a wooden cross hanging from the saddle horn. Stone. Elijah let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He opened the cabin door and stepped outside. Reverend, you're supposed to be heading for the county seat. Stone dismounted, his face grim. I was. Got 3 miles out and ran into trouble. What kind of trouble? Ashford's men, 2 of them, watching the north road. Stone tied his horse to a tree branch. Turned back before they saw me. But Elijah, they're blocking all the main routes out of the territory. He knows we're looking for proof. He knows something. That's enough. Stone stamped snow from his boots and moved toward the cabin door. Where are the children? Inside. Safe. Stone nodded. Then he stopped his hand on the doorframe. There's more. I heard talk in town before I left. Ashford's called a meeting for this afternoon. Town hall. He's presenting his case to the community. Wants to turn everyone against you before the sheriff even gets involved. Let him talk. Words don't change what he did. Words change everything out here. Stone's eyes were hard. You know how these towns work, Elijah. People believe what the powerful man tells them, and Ashford's the most powerful man in 3 counties. Then we tell them different. With what rumors? The word of a 10-year-old boy. Stone shook his head. We need that will. We need legal proof that Ashford's guardianship is a lie. And how do we get it if your roads are blocked? Stone was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Elijah with something like hope in his eyes. There's another way. Longer. Harder. Through the mountains instead of around them. Indian trails. Trapper routes. I used them 30 years ago when I first came to this territory. Stone rubbed his jaw. It'll take 3 days instead of 2. Maybe 4 if the weather turns. But Ashford's men won't know to watch those paths. 3 days. Elijah's mind raced. The sheriff's coming tomorrow. Ashford will have a court order by sundown. Then you'll have to stall them. How? Stone reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote a letter to Judge Harmon before I left town. Told him I'm contesting the guardianship on grounds of fraud and child endangerment. It's not much, but it should buy you a day, maybe 2. Elijah took the paper. The ink was still fresh, the signature bold. You could lose everything for this, Reverend. Your position, your reputation. I lost more than that the day I let Sarah Whitmore sign those papers. Stone's voice was heavy. Those children have been suffering for 2 months because I didn't have the courage to stop it. Well, I've got courage now. He turned and walked back to his horse. 3 days, Elijah. Keep them safe for 3 days. I'll be back with proof, or I won't be back at all." He mounted up, kicked his horse into motion, and disappeared into the trees. Elijah watched him go. Then he looked down at the letter in his hands. 3 days. 72 hours. It might as well have been a lifetime. Inside the cabin, 7 faces watched him as he came through the door. "Was that the preacher?" Sam asked. "Yeah." "Is he going to help us?" "He's trying." Elijah folded the letter and tucked it into his coat. "But we can't stay here. We need to get back to town." "Town?" Grace's voice was sharp. "That's where Ashford is. That's where the sheriff is. You want to walk us right into their hands. I want to hide you somewhere they won't look." Elijah picked up his rifle. "Martha Chen's got a cellar under her store. Ashford's already searched it once. He won't search it again." "How do you know?" "Because men like Ashford don't think small. They look for grand gestures, big moves. They don't look in root cellars." He moved toward the door. "Besides, Martha's one of the few people in this town who ain't scared of him. She'll keep you safe." Clara stood Lily in her arms. "What about you?" "I'm going to that meeting." "The one Ashford called?" Sam's voice cracked. "That's suicide." "Maybe." Elijah met his eyes. "But if I don't show up, people will think I got something to hide. They'll believe whatever Ashford tells them." He shouldered his rifle. "I need to look them in the face. Remind them who I am, what I've lost, and ask them if they really believe a man like me would risk everything for a lie." The children were quiet. "You're brave," Abby said softly. She was holding Jake's hand, her red hair tangled from sleep. "Like a night in a story." "Ain't nothing brave about it." Elijah opened the door. "Just stubborn." The ride back to Silver Springs took 3 hours. Elijah kept to the back trails, the children walking behind his horse in a ragged line. Sam led the way, breaking trail through the snow. Clara brought up the rear, Lily on her hip, Tommy holding her free hand. They reached the edge of town just past noon. The streets were busier now, New Year's Day in full swing, people moving between houses exchanging greetings, pretending the world was good. Elijah tied his horse behind Martha's store and led the children through the back door. Martha was waiting. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "Ashford's men came by an hour ago. Asked if I'd seen you." "What did you tell them?" "Same thing I told them yesterday." "Nothing." She looked at the children, at their thin faces and frightened eyes. "Lord have mercy, they look half dead." They almost were. Elijah guided them toward the back of the store. "I need to hide them. Somewhere Ashford won't look." The cellar. Martha was already moving, pulling up a hidden trapdoor behind a stack of flour sacks. "It's cold down there, but dry. I'll bring blankets. Food." "Thank you, Martha." "Don't thank me yet." She helped Clara down the ladder, then reached for Lily. "Ashford's meeting starts in an hour. Half the town's going, and from what I hear he's got quite a speech planned." "I know. I'm going." Martha stopped, stared at him. "You're what?" "Going to the meeting." Elijah handed Tommy down to Sam, who'd already reached the bottom. "If I hide, they'll think I'm guilty. I need to face them." "Elijah Thornton, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Martha's voice was sharp. "Ashford will have you arrested on the spot. You'll be in a cell before sundown." "Maybe, but at least they'll hear my side first." "Your side?" Martha grabbed his arm. "You've got no proof, no witnesses, nothing but the word of 7 children against the richest man in the territory. What exactly do you think you're going to say?" Elijah looked down at the trapdoor, at the faces looking up at him from the darkness below. "The truth," he said quietly. "Sometimes that's all you've got." He squeezed Martha's hand, then climbed down the ladder. The cellar was small, low-ceilinged, smelling of earth and root vegetables. The children huddled together in the dim light, watching him. "I'll be back," Elijah said. "A few hours, maybe less. What if you don't come back? Clara's voice shook. Then you stay here. Stay hidden. Martha will take care of you until Reverend Stone returns. And if the Reverend doesn't come back either. Elijah was quiet for a moment. Then he knelt in front of her eye level with the children. Listen to me, all of you. His voice was low, steady. I've spent 6 years giving up, letting the world beat me down, waiting to die because I didn't have nothing worth living for. He looked at each of them in turn. Sam trying so hard to be strong. Clara holding her family together with sheer will. Jake with his book full of memories. Grace angry and scared and fierce. Abby still believing in fairy tales. Tommy clutching his bear. Lily too young to understand any of it. But I've got something now. I've got you. His voice cracked. And I ain't giving up again. Not ever. You understand? Nobody spoke. But Tommy reached out and touched Elijah's face. Don't be scared. Tommy whispered. Heroes always come back. Elijah closed his eyes, felt the small hand against his cheek. I'll do my best, son. He climbed back up the ladder and closed the trapdoor behind him. The town hall was packed when Elijah arrived. Every seat taken, people standing along the walls, spilling out the door into the cold. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the stares, the whispers that followed him like a wake. Ashford stood at the front of the room, flanked by his lawyers. He was dressed in his finest coat, gold watch chain, gleaming that blood-red ring on his finger catching the light. Sheriff Garrett stood off to the side, arms crossed, face unreadable. Judge Harmon sat behind a table, papers spread before him. Old gray-haired with the watery eyes of a man who'd made too many compromises. The room went quiet as Elijah walked down the center aisle. Mr. Thornton? Ashford's voice was smooth, pleasant. So glad you could join us. I was just telling these good people about the 7 children you've been harboring. Children who belong in my care. They don't belong to you. Elijah's voice carried through the room. They're not property. They're my legal wards. I have the paperwork to prove it. Ashford held up a document, that familiar red wax seal at the bottom. Signed by Judge Harmon himself. Papers don't make a man fit to raise children. Elijah turned to face the crowd. You all know me. Most of you knew my wife, my daughter. You know what I lost. Silence. A few nods, a few averted eyes. I found those children in my barn 3 nights ago. Starving, freezing. The little one, 4 years old, was so cold she couldn't even cry anymore. His voice hardened. That's what Cornelius Ashford's care looks like. Starvation, beatings, terror. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lies. Ashford's smile never wavered. The desperation of a lonely man trying to hold on to something that doesn't belong to him. Then explain the bruises on Grace Whitmore's arms. Explain why Tommy Caldwell flinches every time a man raises his voice. Explain why those children would rather freeze to death in a barn than go back to your house. Children have active imaginations. They exaggerate. They lie. Ashford spread his hands. Ask any parent. I'm asking you. Elijah stepped closer. Look me in the eye and tell me you never raised a hand to those children. For just a second, something flickered across Ashford's face. A crack in the mask. Then it was gone. I've disciplined them when necessary, as any guardian would. Discipline. Elijah's voice was ice. Is that what you call beating a 9-year-old girl until she can't walk? The room erupted. Voices overlapping, people standing, someone shouting for order. Judge Harmon banged his gavel. Quiet! Everyone, quiet! The noise died slowly. Harmon looked at Elijah, his expression sour. Mr. Thornton, these are serious accusations. Do you have proof? I have witnesses, 7 of them. Children. Ashford's voice was dismissive. Confused, traumatized children who've been manipulated by a grieving man desperate for a family. Then bring them here. A new voice. Sarah Chen stepped forward from the crowd, arms crossed. Let them speak for themselves. Let us hear their side. More murmurs. A few people nodded. Ashford's jaw tightened. That would be inappropriate. Those children are my wards. They're upset, confused. Putting them on display would only traumatize them further. More traumatized than being beaten and starved. Sarah's voice was sharp. Seems to me you don't want them to talk because you're scared of what they'll say. I'm not scared of anything. But Ashford's smile had slipped. Elijah saw his opening. There's something else. He reached into his coat and pulled out Stone's letter. This was written by Reverend Ezekiel Stone, circuit preacher for this territory for 15 years. He's contesting the guardianship on grounds of fraud and child endangerment. He handed the letter to Judge Harmon. The judge read it slowly, his face going paler with each line. Where's Stone now? Riding for the county seat, looking for documents that prove Ashford's guardianship papers are illegal. What documents? Ashford's voice had lost its smoothness. Emily Brennan's will, the one that names her sister as guardian for Jake and Abby. Elijah watched Ashford's face. You remember Emily, don't you? James Brennan's wife? The woman who registered her will with the church because she didn't trust the local judge. The room went dead silent. Ashford's mask cracked wider. Just for a second. Just long enough for Elijah to see the fear underneath. This is ridiculous. Ashford turned to Harmon. Your Honor, this man is clearly delusional. He has no proof, no evidence, nothing but the ramblings of a grief-stricken mind. I demand you issue the order to return my wards immediately. Harmon hesitated. His eyes moved from Ashford to Elijah to the crowd watching in tense silence. The letter from Reverend Stone does raise questions, he said slowly. Questions that should be answered before any decision is made. Questions. Ashford's voice rose. What questions? I have legal documents, signed and witnessed. And Stone claims those documents are fraudulent. Harmon set the letter down. I'm postponing my ruling until Stone returns with the evidence he claims to have. 3 days. 3 days. Ashford stepped forward. Your Honor, this is my courtroom, Mr. Ashford. Harmon's voice was sharp. And I'll run it as I see fit. He banged his gavel. This meeting is adjourned. The crowd began to disperse, voices rising in 100 conversations. Elijah felt a hand on his shoulder. Martha Chen. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, she said quietly, or the stupidest. Probably both. Elijah watched Ashford conferring with his lawyers, their faces tight with anger. But we bought time. That's what matters. 3 days. Martha's eyes were worried. A lot can happen in 3 days. I know. Elijah turned toward the door. That's what scares me. Outside, the afternoon sun was already fading. Long shadows stretched across the snow. Elijah was halfway to his horse when a voice stopped him. Thornton. He turned. Sheriff Garrett stood on the town hall steps, hat in hand. You got guts, I'll give you that. Don't need guts, need proof. Garrett came down the steps slowly. I've known Cornelius Ashford for 10 years. He's not a good man, never was. But he's powerful, and power makes people look the other way. You included? Garrett's jaw tightened. Maybe. Once. He met Elijah's eyes. But I saw those bruises. I saw how those children looked when you brought them in from the cold. That ain't right, no matter what papers say. So help us. I can't. Not openly. Not yet. Garrett glanced back at the town hall, where Ashford was still visible through the window. But I can give you some advice. Watch your back tonight. Ashford don't like losing, and he's got men who'll do whatever he asks. I figured. There's more. Garrett lowered his voice. James Brennan's death. I was the one who filed the report. Ashford told me it was an accident. Told me he found the body at the bottom of the cliff. But when I got there, the body had been moved. Tracks in the snow showed it. And there were marks on Brennan's coat. Handprints. Like someone had grabbed him from behind. Elijah's blood went cold. You never said anything. Ashford's money pays my salary, pays for the jail, the deputies, the whole damn office. Garrett's voice was bitter. I told myself it didn't matter. Brennan was dead either way. What difference would questions make? It makes a difference to his children. Garrett flinched. I know. God help me, I know. He put his hat back on. 3 days, Thornton. If Stone comes back with proof, I'll do what's right. I swear it. He walked away into the growing dark. Elijah stood alone in the street, the cold seeping through his coat. 3 days. 3 days to keep 7 children alive. 3 days to prove a murderer's guilt. 3 days to find justice in a town that had forgotten what the word meant. He looked up at the sky. Stars were beginning to appear cold and distant. Somewhere up there, Margaret was watching. Hope was watching. He wouldn't fail them again. Martha's cellar was warm when he returned, lit by a single candle. The children were asleep in a pile of blankets, all except Sam, who sat by the ladder with the rifle across his knees. You're back. Told you I would be. Elijah climbed down and sat beside him. We got 3 days. Judge postponed his ruling. Sam let out a breath. That's good, right? It's something. Elijah looked at the sleeping children. How are they? Scared? Tired? Sam's voice dropped. Grace cried. She never cries. She's allowed. They all are. What about you? Sam turned to look at him. You ever cry? Elijah was quiet for a long moment. After my wife died, he said finally. I cried every night for a month. Thought I'd never stop. Thought the grief would drown me. What happened? One day the tears just stopped. Not because the pain was gone, just because I'd run out. Nothing left. He rubbed his face. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Grief that can't get out turns into something else, something harder. What does it turn into? Stone. Elijah looked at his hands. Cold, dead stone. And it takes a long time to break that apart again. Sam was quiet. Then softly. Is that why you're helping us, to break apart the stone? Elijah didn't answer right away. He watched the candlelight flicker across the faces of the sleeping children. Watched Lily's chest rise and fall. Watched Tommy's fingers curl around his stuffed bear. Maybe, he said finally. Or maybe I just remember what it's like to have nobody. To feel like the whole world's against you and there ain't a soul who cares. We care. Sam's voice was barely a whisper. About you, I mean. We ain't known you long, but what? You feel like family. Sam looked away embarrassed. That's stupid, ain't it? We just met you 3 days ago. Ain't stupid at all. Elijah put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Family's not about time. It's about who shows up when things get hard. The candle flickered. Shadows danced on the earthen walls. Get some sleep, Elijah said. I'll take watch. Sam hesitated. Then he set down the rifle and moved to join the others. Stopped halfway there. Mr. Thornton? Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on us. Sam lay down next to Clara, pulled a blanket over himself, and closed his eyes. Elijah picked up the rifle and settled against the wall. 3 days. Outside, the wind howled against the store above them. Snow was falling again, burying the town in white. Somewhere out there, Ashford was planning, scheming, looking for a way to win. But here in this cellar, 7 children were sleeping safe and warm. And that was victory enough for tonight. The second day started with fire. Elijah smelled the smoke before he saw it. He climbed out of the cellar just past dawn, and Martha was standing at her back window, face white as bone. Your ranch, she whispered. Elijah, your ranch. He pushed past her and looked. On the horizon, where his property sat against the foothills, a column of black smoke rose into the gray morning sky. His house, his barn, Everything Margaret had touched, everything Hope had known. Burning. No. The word came out strangled. No, no, no. He was out the door before Martha could stop him, running for his horse, riding hard through the empty streets, through the snow up the road toward home. But he knew before he got there, knew it was too late. The house was gone. Walls collapsed inward, roof caved in flames, still licking at the blackened timbers. The barn was a skeleton of smoking beams. The fence posts smoldered like torches planted in the snow. Elijah dismounted and walked toward the ruins. The heat pushed against his face. The smell of burning wood filled his lungs. Everything he'd built with Margaret. The kitchen where she'd taught him to make biscuits. The bedroom where Hope had been born. The chair by the fire where he'd held his daughter for the first and last time. Gone. All of it. He fell to his knees in the snow. Behind him, hoofbeats. He didn't turn. Didn't care who it was. Let them come. Let them finish it. Elijah, Sheriff Garrett's voice, careful, cautious. I came as soon as I saw the smoke. Did you? Elijah's voice was dead. And where were your deputies last night? Where were your men while someone was burning my life to the ground? Garrett didn't answer. Ashford. Elijah stood slowly, turned to face the sheriff. This was Ashford. You don't know that. The hell I don't. Elijah stepped closer. His hands were shaking. Not from cold, from rage. He can't beat me in court, so he's trying to break me, destroy everything I have, make me give up. Even if that's true, I can't arrest a man without evidence. Evidence. Elijah laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. There's your evidence, Wade. 100 acres of it. You think that fire started itself? Garrett looked away. His jaw worked. I'll investigate. Ask around. See if anyone saw anything. You do that. Elijah walked past him toward his horse. And while you're asking around, ask yourself how you're going to sleep tonight. Ask yourself if Ashford's money is worth your soul. He mounted up and rode away without looking back. The children were awake when he returned to the cellar. They could tell something was wrong the moment he came down the ladder. Mr. Thornton. Clara's voice was small. What happened? Elijah sat down heavily against the wall. He couldn't speak, couldn't find the words. Sam moved closer. Sir. My ranch. Elijah's voice cracked. Ashford burned it. The house. The barn. Everything. Silence. Heavy and absolute. Because of us. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. He did it because of us. He did it because he's a monster. Elijah looked up at her. This ain't your fault, none of it. But if we hadn't come to you, then you'd be dead. Elijah's voice was sharp. Frozen in a snowdrift or starved in his cellar. Is that what you want? You want me to wish I'd never found you? Grace flinched. I'm sorry. Elijah rubbed his face. I didn't mean to snap. You lost everything. Jake's quiet voice. The boy was sitting apart from the others, his book in his lap. Like we did. Elijah met his eyes. Yeah, like you did. Does it hurt? More than anything. Jake nodded slowly. It gets worse before it gets better. That's what Mama used to say. The worst pain comes right before the healing starts. Your mama was a wise woman? She was. Jake looked down at his book. Mr. Thornton, I want to show you something. He stood and crossed the cellar, sat down beside Elijah, and opened the leather cover. I told you I saw Ashford push my papa, but I didn't tell you everything. He flipped through the pages, past the drawing of his mother, past the sketch of the cabin, past images Elijah didn't recognize, faces, places, moments captured in pencil. Then Jake stopped. Here. The drawing showed two men standing near a cliff edge. One was clearly Ashford. Jake had captured the gold ring, the expensive coat, the cold eyes. The other was smaller, dressed in work clothes. James Brennan. But there was a third figure, standing behind them, watching. "Who's that?" Elijah pointed. "I don't know his name, but I know his face." Jake's voice was steady. "He works for Ashford. Big man, scar on his chin. He was there when Papa died. He helped Ashford do it." "Helped how?" "He was holding Papa's arms, from behind, so Papa couldn't fight back when Ashford pushed him." Elijah's blood went cold. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure." Jake turned the page. Another drawing. The same scarred man, this time standing in front of a building. "I saw him again last week, in town. He was outside the sheriff's office talking to one of the deputies." "Which deputy?" "The young one. Brown hair, nervous eyes." Elijah knew him. Deputy Miller, new to the job, eager to please. "Jake." Elijah put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "This changes everything. If we can prove this man was involved in your father's death, we can connect him to Ashford. Force the sheriff to investigate." "But how do we prove it?" Sam had moved closer, listening. "It's still Jake's word against theirs." "Not just Jake's word." Elijah looked at the drawing. "Jake, you said you remember everything, every detail. If I brought you face to face with this man, could you identify him? In front of witnesses?" Jake's face went pale. I don't know. You'd have to be brave. Braver than you've ever been." "I'm scared of him." Jake's voice cracked.